Don't look now, ladies and gentlemen, but the Sixers are winners of 4 of their last 5 and are gaining more traction here in the Eastern Conference standings. And it's not surprising that since the return of Paul George and even more recently Joel Embiid, this team is starting to look like the competent title contender that we thought we'd see throughout this regular season. I wanted to start off this video talking about Joel Embiid's return against the Chicago Bulls and how the Sixers team was able to optimize the big three in this game and hopefully are able to optimize each of their strengths moving forward here, as well as just how this is going to help the guys around the big three. But it was a very encouraging sign for the Sixers fan that Joel Embiid played as much as he did in that Chicago game. I know that they said he was on a minutes restriction, but he did end up playing 33 minutes and he was able to shake off a lot of the rust that he looked like he had during that first quarter in the game and really took the game over in the second and third quarters, where he was able to kind of get into that two-man game with Tyrese Maxey at times, as well as have some post-ups and, frankly, just some face-up opportunities against Vucevic there. But I believe he went on I think that he actually had a 19-point second quarter after going scoreless in the first quarter. And you kind of saw during the game that Joel got off to a slow start, playing mostly outside from the perimeter, even really beyond the three-point line there. And I think he actually ended up taking 5 threes in this game. And if I am not mistaken, I believe 4 of those 5 three-pointers were actually in the first quarter there. And he actually started the game off 0-7. And frankly, the Sixers were trying to feed him to get him going, kind of shake off that rust. And it was a credit to Nick Nurse how he really got Joel Embiid into this game and used him as the offensive hub for the majority of this game as well whenever he was on the floor, which allowed him to kind of shake off that rust. And it was a very encouraging sign that Joel kind of responded in the way he did, and his body looked good. He looked like he was in well conditioned, and I understand that there's been a lot of questions about his conditioning with all this time off, and especially through his past history, there have been times when Joel Embiid has had that kind of long extended break where frankly he just comes back out of shape, but he looked like he was moving relatively well. He looked very conditioned. He wasn't hunched over at any point during this game. There were times where he really just was able to be the dominant center that we saw for, frankly, the last 3 seasons with Joel Embiid. And honestly, it was getting to that two-man game with Tyrese Maxey where he was able to kind of hit up that short roll, get into that pull-up Jimmy area. He had some post-ups mixed up every now and again. He even had some rolls. And Joel Embiid, if you do watch the Sixers, at times is a little bit of a reluctant roller, but it was good to see that he really was trusting that knee. And he was finishing around the area, so that's an encouraging sign to see him roll. And especially when you're working with Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, there's going to be so many ways where at times you're going to have to be that roll man and kind of be that supplementary second scoring option on the play there and allow them to set you up with easier baskets. And that's frankly what Tyrese Maxey was able to do with Joel Embiid in this game. The Sixers really abused that two-man game in that second quarter, as well as kind of finishing out this game. The Bulls really just did not have any answer for it, and that was a Joel Embiid who was working off a lot of rust. So this is a very encouraging sign here for the Sixers that Joel Embiid looked as good as he did coming back from this game, and it's only going to help the guys around him when Joel Embiid draws as much gravity as he did in this game. I don't expect him to put up 28 shots in every game, but the Sixers really did abuse that two-man game, and that's frankly why they won this game. And when was the last time that you kind of saw the stretch that the Sixers had during that second quarter? I believe it was like a 20-4 run against the Chicago Bulls, where the Sixers were getting buckets every time down the floor during this game. And frankly, the Sixers just have not had that offensive efficiency thus far this season. And it's not surprising considering the fact that Paul George and Joel Embiid have missed a lot of games at this point. But it's not only offensively that this team is starting to play better, it's also defensively. And over the last 5 games here, the Sixers have actually held their opponents to 100 points per game. And in today's NBA, that's going to win you games when you're able to hold points to that low of a point total. And it's been through defense that a lot of times that these Sixers have played better. And I understand that they're not going up against these offensive juggernauts these past couple games. You face the Detroit Pistons without Cade Cunningham. You face the Charlotte Hornets without LaMelo. You face the Orlando Magic without Pablo. And considering the fact that the Magic, although a very good team, they are kind of limited offensively. The Sixers really haven't faced that offensive juggernaut. Honestly, the Bulls are probably the best offensive team that the Sixers have faced over the past 5, and they played pretty good defense on the Bulls. But it's an encouraging sign to really see how this Sixers team has taken on their defensive identity here. And you can kind of see through the communication, I think that this team is starting to get more and more comfortable playing with one another, getting games on their belt. And we really saw it a lot in this game, especially against the Chicago Bulls, where there would be a switch on a pick and roll, say Joel or Andre Drummond or even Yabusele at times would switch with a lead guard like Tyrese Maxey or Jared McCain. And of course, that's going to leave the big man kind of in that post position against a smaller guard. But we really saw it on the back end where it was guys like Kelly Oubre as well as Paul George kind of telling Jared McCain or Tyrese Maxey, hey, get out to the corner shooter or get out to the wing shooter. And you really saw just really good defensive rotation in this game from the Sixers. And that's a very encouraging sign there because I really do think that the Sixers are going to be kind of led by this team's defense. You have a ton of good perimeter defenders on this team. Of course, you have Paul George, Kelly Oubre. Caleb Martin's going to get more and more run. I do think that there is a little bit of an injury concern right now with Caleb Martin. I'm not sure what's good with his elbow. The shot really has not looked good. But I will say he has played very well defensively this season. And it's very encouraging when you have 3 very good / elite perimeter defenders like the Sixers do, how they're going to be able to really lock down a lot of opposing teams' primary offensive facilitators, or at least make them work. And it's a very encouraging sign when you have those elite perimeter defenders. And then, you have one of the best rim protectors in the game in Joel Embiid down low. So I'm very excited to kind of see how this team continues to evolve defensively, especially given the fact that the Sixers do have 4 days off at this point of this recording, and they do not play again until Friday. So I'm excited to really see how this team continues to gel and continues to mold together here. And Nick Nurse kind of even alluded to it after the pressure with the Chicago Bulls. He said, hey, training camp starts again tomorrow. So I'm very excited to see how the Sixers look going up against the Indiana Pacers here on Friday. And very excited how this team continues to evolve, especially given the fact that Joel Embiid has returned. Paul George looks good, starting to look more and more comfortable with the Sixers here, especially given the fact that the Nick Nurse offense has kind of allowed Paul George to kind of be either that primary playmaker at times when Joel Embiid was not playing, or allowing Paul George to kind of be the scorer that we really know him as in this league. But that's another scenario here. I really wanted to talk about Paul George and how he's kind of adapted his game to play with this Sixers team this season. And I think it was on Nick Nurse who said, or maybe he took Paul George aside, he said, hey, we don't have a ton of playmakers on this team, so we're going to put the ball in your hands and we're going to ask you to kind of create for others at times. And I think that Paul George has really done a solid job being that playmaker thus far this season. He's done a real nice job of kind of mixing over when to take over games, as well as kind of being that leading playmaker. And it really took shape during the Magic games, I feel. Paul George did such a good job of kind of creating shots for others. And I understand that he's not an elite playmaker. There are going to be times where he's going to turn the ball over, or maybe he might not put up the best shot in the scenario or get them into the most comfortable set. But Paul George has done a really nice job of adapting his game to fit what this team needs. And that's why I was so excited about bringing in Paul George, because he can really play any way that any type of team needs him. If you need him to guard the best team's opposing player, he can do that. If you need him to be a primary facilitator or be a primary ball handler, he can do that. If you need him to be the aggressive scorer that he needs to be at times during this Sixers season, he can do that. So I want to give a major shout out to Paul George. And the numbers might not look great in terms of the points per game or maybe even the shooting efficiencies, but I think that Paul George has done a really nice job on both ends of kind of allowing himself to be molded into this team and asking what this team has done for him, whether it's defensively or being that playmaker that this team really needs. So I did want to give a quick shout out to Paul George there. And it's very exciting to see how he's kind of continued to evolve throughout his career here. And I've always been a big Paul George fan, but now that he's on the Sixers, and especially given the way that he's played and adapted his abilities, it's a very encouraging sign of how I think that the Sixers team can go even further than they have in years past. Outside of the big three, there have been several players who have stepped up as well thus far this season. And of course, I first off want to start off with talking about Jared McCain. I don't want to get too far into it because I kind of do want to make a little bit of a separate video kind of breaking down how I believe that the Sixers absolutely killed this past year's draft. But just the gravity of Jared McCain on this team is going to help out players so much. And this team is not necessarily the greatest three-point shooting team, but his threat from the three-point range and his ability to knock down shots at several different levels on the floor is so crucial to this team. And just his off-ball movement, I don't want to compare it to Steph Curry, but like he's one of the better off-ball movement players in this league. And it really does allow for this offense to kind of maintain a different type of dimension here and allow Jared McCain to really be an offensive X factor on the floor at all times with his lethal shooting ability. And I'll give him a ton of credit. I think he's a better scorer than I thought he was going to be in this league. He's done a better job than I thought of finishing around the paint. And when he gets to that elbow area and that free throw line area, that mid-range jumper is lethal. So I'm very encouraged to see what Jared McCain can do, especially given the fact that he hasn't played a ton with Joel Embiid or Paul George yet. I'm kind of excited to see them maybe work on some flare screen action with him and Tyrese Maxey where he's setting the screen. Kind of the famous Buddy Hield play a ton of times in Indiana with him and Tyrese Halliburton. Kind of set that flare screen there, hopefully get open on the three-point line. And even maybe introduce that kind of Steph Curry or the Steph Curry, J.J. Redick two-man game with Joel Embiid. Because Jared McCain is certainly probably the better finisher of those two players. And with more and more time under their belt, I really do think that that could be a legitimate option with Joel Embiid and Jared McCain, that two-man dribble handoff game that we saw a ton with Steph Curry as well as J.J. Redick with Joel Embiid. But another guy who's kind of amplified their role even more these past couple games has been Kelly Oubre. And it's not surprising just due to the gravity of the big three. And we really saw him take advantage of it in the Chicago game, especially given the fact that Tyrese Maxey had 14 assists. And I believe it was at least 3 of those where it was kind of to a cutting Kelly Oubre or a wide open Kelly Oubre from the three-point line. And Kelly Oubre even had kind of one of those relocation threes where he was relocating from the wing to the middle of the floor at the top of the key and knocked down the three-point jumper there. But I do think that Kelly Oubre is going to get some of the easiest looks that he's had throughout his career. So I would expect his shooting numbers to jump up here. But especially given last game, you just saw all the gravity that the big three really have. It just allowed for Kelly Oubre to open up a ton of cutting lanes there. And it's very encouraging. We even saw that backdoor lob from Tyrese Maxey to Kelly Oubre. And I think that they've at least connected on that play 3 times over the past 3 games. So it's a very encouraging sign to kind of see how Kelly Oubre has amplified himself in this offense. And he's taken on the challenge defensively, especially against the Bulls there. I believe he had 3 steals, and he was guarding Zach LaVine for a large portion of that game, playing very good defense. But he played better perimeter defense than I thought he would last season, and he really has kind of created himself into a very good perimeter defender in this league. And it's very exciting to see kind of how Kelly Oubre has adapted his game, not only to match last year's Sixers team, but this year's Sixers team as well. And I'm pretty thankful that Kelly Oubre is here. He's quickly become one of my favorite players in the league. And I really hope that they do not trade him because I do think that he is a vital part to this team. I do kind of see him as that 4th option who can really play off the big three in several different areas, as well as kind of be that kind of lockdown perimeter defender that this team really does need, especially given the fact that Paul George and Caleb Martin are also very good perimeter defenders. That's going to be a very difficult defensive team to take advantage of come playoff time when this team eventually hopefully does get back on track and make the playoffs here. But I do want to give a shout out as well to KJ Martin and Gershon Yabusele, who have played absolutely great this season. I'll start off with Gershon. He has done such a good job of kind of transforming himself. I wouldn't quote unquote call him a shooter, but he has done such a nice job of kind of transforming his shot and really adapted his game to the NBA game there. And he's been able to knock down shots, and it's just such a good job, and a credit to him how he has worked on that part of his game to really make him a viable threat from that three-point line there. And he does a nice job when he's given the fact that he has to play some small ball 5. He is a pretty good rebounder. He really does know how to use his size. And when he's down low against even guys who are bigger than him, he really is able to kind of use his weight and take advantage of some matchups there. So a ton of credit to Gershon Yabusele there. Really has done a nice job of kind of cementing himself as a true rotation player for this team. And it's going to give Nick Nurse more options come playoff time, whether you want to go small ball 5 or even play him at the 4 next to Joel Embiid. I do think that he actually started against Chicago Bulls, so that's an interesting thing as well. Or maybe he was coming off the bench, the first guy off the bench. But it's very encouraging to see how Gershon really has kind of transformed himself, and he is a pretty good rebounder for his size, and I do think that this team is not necessarily the greatest rebounding team there, so it's very encouraging for them to kind of gain an additional rebounder alongside guys like Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond there. But back to KJ Martin as well. KJ Martin has done such a good job these past couple games of really kind of playing to his strengths, and I will give him credit. He has shot the ball a lot better this season than he has throughout his career, but he's always been a pretty serviceable perimeter defender, and he has like a stocky frame which allows him to kind of bump with guys on the perimeter, but he just does a nice job of kind of moving his feet and staying in front of guys. And while he is limited offensively, you kind of know how he's going to that left hand. The ability for him to kind of be that small ball roller that Tyrese Maxey has taken a ton of credit with, kind of you running that pick and roll with KJ Martin and getting him more involved offensively. It's very encouraging to see KJ Martin kind of being a legitimate offensive threat, and how the Sixers have kind of found him into that ability to get him a chance to really kind of have success on the offensive end. So it's very encouraging there. Not necessarily known for being an offensive player, but a real nice job by KJ Martin these past couple games, especially against the Magic. He played very good ball, I think really in both games there, and especially in Charlotte as well. KJ Martin really has done a nice job in kind of solidifying himself as a key rotation player there. So I did want to give a shout out to a couple of those players there. Very encouraging. And who knows, man, maybe this Joel Embiid, Paul George-less team at the beginning of the season kind of allowed Nick Nurse to kind of see what he had on his bench. It might actually end up helping this team in the long run to kind of see these guys get some run, get some positive momentum under their belt, and maybe they're able to kind of expand that rotation a little bit for this regular season and maybe even the postseason down the road, where they're going to have more legitimate options to go through and guys are going to be more ready due to the fact that they got this early season time here. So it's very encouraging. Understandably, the Sixers are 7-15 right now. That's really not encouraging at all, but you always got to look at the positives here, and I'm very encouraged how the Sixers are kind of drifting off into that more positive, gaining a little bit of momentum here, getting some wins under their belt. In this stretch coming up here, they got a chance to rattle off a couple more wins, as well as maybe make a statement against a team or two like the Cavs or the Celtics here. I do believe that they got the Charlotte Hornets twice. Let me check the schedule, actually. Yeah, they have the Charlotte Hornets twice on a back-to-back, technically, or not a back-to-back, but just back-to-back games of facing Charlotte. Once at home, once on the road, and of course they face the Pacers on Friday. Sixers should be able to win all three of those games. Then Saturday, December 21st, you're at the Cavs. That would be a statement game. If the Sixers can come out and beat the Cavs there, that would kind of put the league on notice, depending what the Sixers have done in the previous three games there. Then you're at home against the Spurs. That could be a very winnable game. Then, of course, there's that Christmas Day game against the defending champion Boston Celtics. So the Sixers have a chance to really make some noise here, pick up some wins, and gain even more ground in the standings here. So I'm very excited to see if the Sixers can continue to kind of carry this momentum after this short little break. I'm excited to see how the Sixers kind of implement more and more offensive strategies as well as defensive strategies in what Nick Nurse kind of coined as the training camp 2.0 here. So very encouraged by how the Sixers have been playing of late, and they're going to have to get some wins to kind of really kind of bring themselves back into position here. They dug themselves a huge hole at the start of this season, but very encouraging to see that Joel Embiid looked as good as he did. Very encouraged by how Paul George has been playing thus far this season. And frankly, once Tyrese Maxey kind of gets his shot back under him, I think this team's going to be very difficult to stop. So super excited about the Sixers here. Hopefully they can continue all this positive momentum they've had over the past couple days.